everything in our universe essentially operates like an equation. In fact, mathematically, it is represented as equations. Mathematically, all of the laws of physics are pretty much represented as equations. And in an equation, everything tends back to equilibrium. Force equals mass times acceleration. All right? Increase acceleration, it increases the force. Increase mass, it increases the force. Decrease mass, decreases the force. Decrease acceleration, decreases the force. Because what happens to one side is going to requisitely happen to the other side, and then balance is restored. And that's the way that the universe works. For instance, the Earth has an orbiter that goes around the sun. And all the planets in the solar system go around the sun in a particular orbit. And that is, given the orbits that they've got, all of the forces that they're enacting on each other and that the sun's enacting on them all cancel each other out. So you have equilibrium. And that is why they just keep going around and around and around and around and around. Now let's say that a rogue planet from interstellar space went into our solar system and then started throwing all the orbits out of whack. Because the sun is this great source of gravitational influence, eventually, after the cataclysm, even if some planets got ejected from the solar system and some of them crashed into each other, what was left over will once again find their niche around the sun, and equilibrium will be restored. If Andromeda were to go and collide with the Milky Way, you'd have, again, a cataclysm between the stars. But eventually, all those stars would find their niche around the great giant black hole that is a combination of that from the Milky Way and Andromeda put together. They will be at the center of that big giant fucking elliptical galaxy. All right? You'll have order be restored and an ecosystem. The desire to survive, which the fear of death is a derivative of. We kind of wonder, why are we afraid of death? Well, here's actually an interesting, here's a thought that I'm going to give you. The fear of death, which is the inclination to survive, exists in every organism in an ecosystem. Every organism does its best to survive or not die. As such, they all coalesce into forming a system of systems that maintains homeostasis and balance. Now let's say that you brought an invasive species into that ecosystem. It would throw homeostasis out of whack. But everything in the ecosystem, including the invasive species, all wants to survive. And so they all do their best to survive. In the process, some species might even go extinct, but eventually what's left over will find their niche. Even the invasive species, if they're not apex, they'll find some new predators may arise, and you'll have a set of checks and balances that will eventually be in place. So homeostasis will be restored to that ecosystem. So the fear of death and the inclination to survive is essentially biological gravity. It is to an ecosystem and to biology what gravity is to the cosmos. And, interestingly, gravity is what propelled cosmic evolution. It's what made possible the formation of stars. It made possible the creation of the periodic table of the elements, which we are all made of and the whole planet is. And you know what? The fear of death and the inclination to survive is what propels what? It's what propels evolution. Because creatures adapt. Species adapt to changes in their environment because they all want to survive. So the inclination to survival, that the fear of death is just a conscious manifestation of, that we are aware of, that is a compulsory that is just a manifestation of that compulsory inclination. It is biological gravity. That's biological gravity right there. So the reason that we're afraid of death is because we have to be. Because that's the way that it's written in nature. Biological gravity. We are afraid of death for the same reasons that the earth is going around the sun.